All right. Hello, everyone. We are Group 5. Our team consists of myself, Ashley, Ivan, Jared, and Stefan. And for our best practices project, we are focusing on air freight at Nike. All right, so we'll get started first with just some quick company background. So we're focusing on Nike, as I said. Their mission is really to bring inspiration and innovation to every athlete in the world. Nike's really leading in the industry for footwear and apparel, and their products range from shoes, apparel, and equipment to sport accessories. Nike has a very wide breadth of stores. They have more than 750 stores with sales in over 160 countries. And annual revenue well over 36 billion. Of that revenue, their sales are primarily made up of 600 million units of footwear and 500 million units of apparel. Globally, Nike takes in 55% of their revenue from sources outside of the US. And because of that, they also outsource most of their manufacturing outside of the US as well. Because Nike depends on outsourcing for all of their products, it creates significant logistical challenges in order for them to get their products to their customers. All right, so our problem statement that we're addressing for our best practices is Nike's ineffective use of air freight. Currently, Nike's use of air freight is on average only 70% effective. And this really prevents Nike from reaching their goals to reduce their emissions by 50%. Additionally, since air freight is their only option currently to expedite shippings, it's often utilized when it shouldn't be. From our research, we'll be providing Nike with an effective strategy that will deliver clear change management processes, provide effective KPIs and metrics that will help them visually communicate their progress to plan. And lastly, we'll be presenting Nike with a streamlined process for them to make smart decisions about air freight. All right, so going into our key topics and really our agenda for our pitch. Today, our team's going to be presenting a roadmap for Nike with key topics in strategy development, change management processes, KPIs and analytics, alternative solutions to air freight, as well as industry use cases and a streamlined process for decision making. All right, so to begin building a strategy for Nike, we really started with a challenge statement and a goal, and that is to provide our client with an approach that is systems focused, pushes organizational accountability, and utilizes change management to increase their air effectiveness to 90%. In order for us to really understand Nike's position, we went out and performed a SWOT analysis to try and assess their strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. And some key points from that analysis is that Nike has a lot of opportunity, especially in automating manual processes for their logistics organization. And with that, they also have opportunity to utilize software in order to streamline freight approval processes. Additionally, since air freight use is only 70% effective, one of the weaknesses that we found for Nike is that transportation is really their highest driver for emissions, and it's also has a significant impact on costs for them. All right, so now I'm going to transition over to Jared, and he's going to talk about some of the alternatives Nike has to air freight.
So air freight utilization has always been a short-term countermeasure that has the potential to really ingrain itself into a process and become a long-term solution. The cost and environmental impacts of utilizing air freight as a long-term strategy have to be weighed against all valuable alternatives once the short-term need is fulfilled. The commodities that comprise the bulk of air freight shipments are high-value and time-sensitive projects similar to what Nike offers in the marketplace. Most companies like Nike find themselves in situations in which expediting air freight utilization is only available short-term countermeasure to solve the time-sensitive situations that they may run across. There are a couple of different alternatives that can be utilized or can be leveraged in modern-day strategies to help Nike combat the utilization of air freight. New initiatives focus on increasing global infrastructure for freight movement in Asia and Europe through things like China's Belt and Road project, in combination with strategic nearshoring to complete the final mile of both customization and delivery, will help to reduce the dependency on air freight as an activity that moves from short-term countermeasures to long-term solution due to a lack of viable options. Starting with the Belt Road Initiative. So the Belt Road Initiative is a road and rail investment that China is working through in conjunction with multiple countries across Central Asia and Southeast Asia. It's a combination of road and rail investment through the central parts of China and Central Asia, and maritime port development investment to build a new maritime Silk Road, as seen in the map in blue. The goal for both of these different paths is to reduce the transit lead times from Asia into Europe, Africa, Middle East, and ultimately to the customer or to the points of customization. Additionally, it'll move a lot of the manufacturing from China, from the east coast of China into central China, so to utilize the labor that's available and the space that's available in China's Rust Belt. What this will do in reducing freight times is that standard transit times for ocean freight is about 30 to 40 days, making air freight the only alternative method when product is needed within that 30 to 40 day time frame. But with China's One Belt, One Road initiative, transit lead times will be reduced down to 10 to 15 days, shortening the amount of time needed to get product to the specific location, which will lessen the need for air freight. Nearshoring as an option has increased in frequency over the last few years, which is contradictory to the last 30 years of offshoring that has been happening from the US and Europe into lower labor cost areas. Due mainly to increasing labor costs in Southeast Asia and the need to have more agility in the supply chain to finish the final mile customization, nearshoring is an opportunity for Nike to decrease the amount of lead time for the final mile of customization and product delivery to customer. So going on that, one of the key things that you have to think about in either taking advantage of the Belt Road Initiative to reduce lead times and or nearshoring is that analytics and KPIs have to be tracked for your freight spend in all regards. Ashley, if you can move to the next slide. So goal setting, analytics, and key performance indicators can provide valuable insight and transparency to targeted areas for sustaining improvements, as well as visibility into areas that may be cost or quality drivers for specific areas of spend and or performance. And in order to maintain continuity and quality of data collection and analytics perform, it is imperative that there is both upper level management support and internal stakeholder buy-in. The combination of the two will drive accuracy and meaningfulness of data analytics and KPI reporting. The cornerstone of any meaningful key performance indicator is predicated on the understanding that there is a clear and concise reason behind the need to track and synthesize the data into a reportable metric. It is critical that management develop an integrated framework so that performance is measured and reported in a way that results in action. The use of air freight as a short-term countermeasure should always be accompanied by a tracking metric that drives to the root cause of the need to use the expedited service level. Nike's attempts to reduce their air freight spend or reduce their carbon footprint by 50% and increase the utilization to 90% from 70%. Analytics and KPIs would definitely be used to identify what areas of the air freight spend that was used was the 30% that was effective in use. So the 70% ineffectiveness of Nike's air freight utilization would be divulged through driving to root cause as a driver of the KPI and analytic. So making sure that the data that is tracked is meaningful and drives to root cause to result in action is the main goal of KPIs and analytics. Once that data has been derived, the next step in the process is affecting change management, which now Ivan will go over with you.
So executing a successful logistics strategy must start with the CEO. With the full support of the CFO, COO, they must develop and advocate Nike's overall strategy. And with the help of the implementation team, then they must lay out their targets and benefits, whether it's financially. When implementing a change, an organization must consider their return on investment. Successful, innovative operations can result in performance improvements and improve market performance yields a host of strategic payoffs from higher customer retention or to the ability to penetrate new markets. And also in this case, also for environmentally, and Nike's looking to cut their CO2 emissions in half. Then they must have an effective and clear communication. So they must identify, expose key people to a customized communication at a very early stage. And they must tailor this communication to the audience for cross-function supply chain initiatives. Then they must also identify those who are accountable, whether it's someone from finance or sales, marketing, or supply chain. They must communicate this change effectively. And as far as sustaining a supply chain, it's a definitely difficult task. So a company must have a plan to do so. So which includes they must also train all functions involved when there is employee turnover. They must also have periodic audit of processes. They must also create metrics that will make problems visible when things start to veer off track. And so basically, I'm now transitioning back to Ashley for setting up this decision making.
Great, thanks, Ivan. All right, so in order to provide Nike with a streamlined process for making effective air freight decisions, we're really trying to recommend a holistic approach. So that starts with a clear strategy and top-down buy-in, meaning that leaders are accountable and are really taking ownership of their organization's targets. In order to effectively manage progress to plan, as Jared talked about a bit earlier, we'll have KPIs and metrics that really tell a story on how they're progressing with their targets and emissions as well as margins. We're also recommending transitioning their current manual process for approving expedited shipping to a software program that we'll talk more about on the next chart. Utilizing software will help, utilizing software to manage approvals will work to create an enterprise standard. It's going to help them create clear, repeatable processes that really work across business units and have that cross-functionality built in. And then recommendations from the software will enable leaders to make smarter decisions regarding air freight. And as I mentioned earlier too, it will really help work to reduce those non-value-added manual transactions that they're currently using. All right. Okay, so going into a little more detail about the software that we're recommending for Nike. From our research, there was a number of different vendors that provide similar software, but we're really recommending a solution from Acquittive. Working with their clients in similar industries, they've been able to see anywhere from 7 to 10% reductions in air freight. We're really hoping by utilizing the system, we're pushing forth like a system-based approach for freight approvals. It will not only create that enterprise standard that I talked about, but helps eliminate silos between organizations, as well as working to reduce those non-value-added processes. And I truly believe that if we are to implement a software like this, it will really help. It's going to help Nike meet their goals for both emissions as well as cost. All right, so next we're going to transition to Stefan. He's going to talk about our ship mode decisions and use cases.
Thank you. So in thinking about the way that air freight is currently used, there are some really important key drivers, both for Nike and for the other companies that we benchmarked, that make it an important tool in the tool case. I think for Nike, a very unique use case is the high heat and launch model. This is product that is seen on court or in a concert that is going to have very high demand and very high sell-through on a specific day. The expectation with high heat and launch product is that 100% of that product will be sold out within the first week. And sometimes as many as 1 million units are sold in as short as 7 minutes. For this product to be effective, it all needs to be in the market on launch day. And this is a first use case where Nike currently uses air freight for all product. The second one is when market opportunity occurs. When there's a new trend or a weather pattern has developed, or maybe a competitor is unable to meet the demand and some space is opened in the market, air freight becomes a tool for Nike and for other companies to be able to rapidly onshore inventory where otherwise they would be facing the 40-day lead time associated with bringing goods to North America via ship. If I could have the next slide, please. The next use case we're going to talk about is much less optimum. These are more operational challenges that companies should be targeting to reduce the use of air freight for through the strategies that Jared has discussed and the utilization of inventory. The first is uptime. For manufacturing facilities or other facilities that rely on consumable parts or machinery to keep running, the cost of downtime, that is when that facility isn't producing the good that it produces, can be measured from anything from thousands of dollars an hour to millions of dollars a minute. This is a case where not having the right spares available results in using air freight to bring the parts needed to get the facility back up and online. But it's extremely costly, and every time that it's used, there should be an after-action report to avoid its use in the future. The second one is coverage. Sometimes when factories are delayed in producing goods, when there's an unforeseen transportation delay, or when market demand is higher than originally planned for, the orders that have actually been placed are not able to be met with physical goods. To get a work around this, Nike and other companies use air freight to bring more product into the market more quickly. But again, this is a case where if there's any alternative to increase coverage numbers in the future, they should absolutely be taken. And if I could have the next slide, please. Oh, sorry, one back. The last use case I want to talk about is time to market. So for products like iPhones that may only have a life cycle of a year, spending 40 days on the water is actually a significant amount of the portion of their life cycle time. The same can be true of specialty hard drives, servers, manufacturing equipment, anything where the total life of that product, where it is the newest, hottest thing, is measured in months, not years. In these cases, being able to move the product quickly into market before the impact of obsolescence starts to hurt full price sell-through is a time when air freight in the current state is probably necessary. The last one, and this was less applicable to Nike, but it's certainly an interesting one as we look at the overall air freight landscape, is spoilage. So for food in particular, and certainly fish, avocados, fruits, and other specialty goods, there's a very, very finite time at which they have any value at all if they're not frozen. So for this use case, it's another time where illuminating air freight will be extremely challenging across industries because there's such a finite window that fresh food products have any value at all. And if you could move on to the last slide. So to summarize everything that the group has talked about, I wanted to do a last recap through from our criteria of what makes a good opportunity for air freight through improving the process. So again, when we look at products for Nike or for other organizations that make a good use case for air freight, we're talking about things that have a high demand, where spoilage or obsolescence is a risk, where we know exactly how we're going to use it in the market, and we know we're going to get a return that outstrips the cost of air freight, which erodes margin. The process then to utilize that air freight should be consistent. It should be rolled out to stakeholders in a uniform way. And it should be enabled by a tool to make sure that the decision is followed in a clear and as automated a way as possible. Finally, after we've made our decision and we've brought the goods on shore, whether that was via ship or via air, we need to use focus metrics and analytics tools to look at the way air freight was used and make decisions on how the process can be improved, how coverage and supply scenarios can be resolved that resulted in the air freight use in the past, and where there are other places that improvements in the decision-making process can be made. I think that's it.
All right. Great. All right. Thank you.